Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 2019 AAAS webinar series called Scientific Collaborations with Human Rights Organizations. Today's topic is the science factor in human rights litigation, engineering a legal solution for the threatened historic town in Mexico. The discussion will concern work coordinated by the Environmental Defense Law Center in Bozeman, Montana. These webinars are a project of the Science and Human Rights Coalition of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, or AAAS. The project team includes both social scientists and evaluators of human rights programs. Previous webinars in our three-year series include critical steps and innovations in program evaluation. They are all archived at the AAAS website. A link will be available at the end of the webinar. This year, we wanted to showcase the varied ways that scientists, engineers, and health professionals can and do assist human rights organizations. This project from the Environmental Defense Center, or EDLC, exemplifies such collaboration, and we are very pleased to feature their work. I'm Kathy Furlong, a member of the project team and a statistician by trade. We have three speakers today who are associated with EDLC and the Mexican Litigation Project regarding a planned dam in threatened town. Fernanda Vazon, Claudia Gomez-Godoy, and Tunis Upton Nort will discuss different aspects of the project, including the science connection. Fernanda Vazon is a staff attorney at EDLC. She helps local lawyers develop legal strategies and conduct research on national and international frameworks for cases in Latin America where local communities have been affected by natural resource development projects. Ms. Vazon holds advanced degrees from Brazil and the United Kingdom in international law, environmental management, and development management. Claudia Gomez-Godoy is a Mexican attorney specializing in public interest litigation. She has worked on numerous cases defending the rights of indigenous and Campesino communities affected by resource development projects, including dams and mining operations. Claudia has been a visiting professor at several universities and a consultant for Oxfam Mexico. Tunis Upton Nort is a hydrologist with long experience in various aspects of hydrology and water resource development, including computer applications. He has worked on many projects in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Tunis has conducted mathematical modeling for simulation studies regarding water resource development projects at basin levels in various countries involving flood control, dams, urban drainage systems, and hydrometric development, including GIS aspects. Fernanda, Claudia, and Tunis will talk for about 40 minutes. A question and answer period will follow, and the webinar will end at approximately 11 a.m. Eastern Time. You may submit questions at any time via the question box in the GoToWebinar control panel. Now, let me turn the program over to Fernanda. Fernanda, please explain what Environmental Defender Law Center is, how it got started, and how it works with AAAS.
Yes, hi Kathy, thanks for having me. The Environmental Defender Law Center is a nonprofit organization that works to protect the human rights of people in developing countries who are fighting to protect their environment. EDLC was created in 2003 to provide a range of legal services to environmental defenders. EDLC works with affected communities in several ways. EDLC helps finding lawyers to bring lawsuits to redress human rights and human rights violations, assists with legal arguments, and provides small grants to help cover litigation costs. However, almost all the cases involving harms to the environment and resource development projects also involve a scientific aspect that must be understood or proven in court. And this is how a partnership between EDLC and AAAS has begun. In our experience, having prominent lawyers and scientists put their weight behind the traditionally powerless and underrepresented immediately helps leveling the playing field and increases the chance of bringing justice to these types of cases.
Thank you so much, Fernanda. Claudia, could you please tell us more about the community of Temacapulin and how they are affected by the construction of the Zapotillo Dam?
Hola, buenos días. Soy Claudia y voy a hablar en español. Bueno, pues Temacapulin o Temaca, como le llaman sus pobladores, es un pequeñito pueblo en el estado de Jalisco, en México. Durante mucho tiempo Temaca fue famosa por su iglesia de 250 años, por el chile de árbol, que es un chile de la región, por sus aguas termales y hoy en día pues es también famoso por la resistencia en contra de la presa del Zapotillo. ¿Qué haces? Desde el 2007, cuando la gente de Temaca supo a través de los medios de comunicación que su pueblo iba a ser inundado por una presa, comenzaron una resistencia pacífica al proyecto. Solicitaron la ayuda de organizaciones no gubernamentales de derechos humanos como INDEC y nosotros como colectivo de abogados que diseñamos una estrategia legal para defender la ciudad y sus derechos, o el pueblo y sus derechos. Todavía recuerdo que la primera demanda que presentamos en 2008 fue negada por el tribunal con el argumento que la represa era un pequeño proyecto en papel y que no se iba a hacer, que ningún derecho se vería afectado y pues esto no era verdad. Ni el gobierno ni las empresas tienen derecho a inundar un pueblo y reubicar de manera forzada a sus habitantes sin un aviso previo y también sin haber buscado mejores alternativas sociales y ambientales.
I'm going to translate for Claudia. So Claudia says Temacapulin, or Temaca as it's called for its inhabitants, is a small historic town in the state of Jalisco. For a long time, Temaca was famous for its 250-year-old church, for its chile de árbol pepper, and for its hot springs. But nowadays, it's also famous for its peaceful resistance against the Zapotillo Dam. Since 2007, when the people of Temaca learned through the media that their town was going to be flooded by the dam, they began a peaceful resistance to the project. They requested the help of non-governmental organizations such as Colectivo de Abogados and IMDEC to represent them in a collective lawsuit and design a legal strategy to defend their town and their rights. She remembers that the first claim that they filed was rejected by the court, which argued that the dam was only a project on paper and that no rights had been affected. This is not true because the Mexican government and the companies have no right to flood a town and forcibly relocate its inhabitants without prior notice and without having sought better environmental and social alternatives.
Gracias, Claudia y Fernanda. Tunis, I heard that there are two different project designs. The original design was an 80-meter dam and the 105-meter modified project design. Could you please tell us the difference between each one?
Thank you, Kathy. Yes, Zapotillo is a water storage dam, and its original design was for an 80-meter high dam wall. According to this design, Temacapulin would not need to be relocated as the town was going to protect it by two 12-meter-high dikes with the same crest level as the main dam. The inhabitants of Temaca agreed reluctantly to this scheme. The water from the dam would be used to beef up the raw water supply to the city of Leon by 5 cubic meters per second via a 140-kilometer long aqueduct and pumping station. Note that the losses in the water reticulation system in Lyon were estimated at 50%, implying that it would be perhaps a better idea to fix them instead of building the dam and pipeline. However, at some point, when the federal licensing process for the 80-meter-high dam was already ongoing, the project was modified to increase the size of the wall to 105 meters, flooding Temacapulin and two other communities under the waters of the reservoir. The reasoning was that it would be economically more feasible to increase the volume and to do away with the production dikes at all, arguing that soil conditions were too difficult to build very high dikes. However, although in the end there was only a federal license for a dam up to 80 meters and the 12 high protection dikes, it looked from the construction progress as if the contractor was nevertheless executing the 105-meter design, for which there was no license. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tunes. Fernanda, isn't this against the human rights of the inhabitants of Temaca to decide this from above without letting them have a voice in this decision-making process?
Yes, Katy, it is, of course, against their rights. And this is why EDLC presented more than one Friends of the Court briefs in the various lawsuits filed by Claudia in Mexico, seeking the protection of the rights to information, to be consulted, and to participation in decision-making related to the projects that affect them. People of Temaca have also the right not to be deprived of their property without prior notice or compensation. They have the right to due process, to access to court. They have the right to food and many other rights that have been violated in this case.
Thank you. Claudia, when did you realize that in addition to the human rights argument, you really needed a strong technical argument in this case?
Bueno, pues nuestro colectivo de abogados llevábamos una serie de demandas en conjunto con el pueblo de Temacapulin. Habíamos obtenido varias victorias legales defendiendo todos estos derechos que Fernanda acaba de mencionar. Sin embargo, tuvimos muchos problemas para hacer cumplir esas decisiones judiciales. Los jueces eran demasiado lentos, evasivos, y pues eso era exactamente lo que el gobierno quería, que el proyecto se siguiera construyendo para llegar a la altura de 105 metros y hacer entender que no era posible detener el proyecto o lo que se llama un hecho consumado. Sin tener todos los permisos necesarios, sin haber respetado el debido proceso y la consulta, tanto el gobierno como las empresas pues seguían construyendo la presa. En 2013 la Suprema Corte decide a favor de las comunidades y dice que el proyecto debe mantenerse en 80 metros. Es en ese momento cuando surge la necesidad, la urgencia de tener una mejor comprensión de los argumentos legales, de todos los temas que tenían, de los argumentos técnicos, perdón, y así fortalecer nuestros argumentos legales. Desde entonces ya estábamos trabajando con EDLC y les preguntamos si ellos podrían encontrar un experto que pudiera darnos una mejor asesoría. Por supuesto no teníamos dinero para ello, pero que pudiéramos hacer entender a los jueces las implicaciones técnicas de las dos alturas de la presa.
Gracias.
I will translate for Claudia. So Claudia says that their lawyers collective have filed a number of lawsuits on behalf of the people of Temaca, and they had several legal victories defending the rights that Fernanda mentioned earlier. However, they had problems for the enforcement of those judicial decisions. The judges were too slow, and this is exactly what the government wanted. They wanted to continue building the 105-meter dam to say that it was not possible to stop the project. They wanted to create a fait accompli. And that without having the necessary permits, without respecting due process and consultation. So the construction was still ongoing. In 2013, the Supreme Court decided in favor of the communities that the 80-meter design had to be maintained. And it is at that moment that it became urgent for us to have a better understanding of the technical issues behind the two different dam designs. We had already been working with EDLC and asked them if they could help an expert to provide free advice on the technical implications of the two different designs.
Gracias. Tunis, I suppose this is where your role begins. Can you tell us more about what you were asked to do and the challenges and the opportunities in this case?
Yes, this was indeed when my role began. Although I was already for a couple of years on the AAAS list of available experts, this was my first project with them. The local NGO IMDEC, through EDLC, sent me lots of information on the design process, including hydrologic reports, photos, etc. And 3 principal questions they want an answer. First of all, what is the construction level of the dam on the 8th of September 2014? Second, what is the actual design basis, 80 meters or 105 meters? And thirdly, can the 12-meter high dikes protect Temacapulin? From the information I received, I could conclusively state that the contractor had almost reached the 80 meters at certain sections of the dam, and that at that level, the crest was far too wide for an 80-meter high dam, pointing at a 105-meter design. In principle, 12-meter high dikes could protect Temaca with an 80-meter high dam, although more geotechnical investigations should be carried out to establish the optimum location. On presenting my preliminary report, I was invited to come over to Mexico and pay a visit to the site and Temacapulin, where I was very well received by its inhabitants. The dam site, having been declared a federal area, could officially not be visited. But with the aid of a drone and camera, we got excellent photos of the status of the construction. During my stay, we also paid a visit to the federal judge to explain our findings, which were obviously pointing in the direction of a 105-meter high dam being constructed without a proper license. Working with the local NGO IMDEC was extremely fruitful. Not only did they provide all the necessary technical information, but also set up a meeting with the population of Temaca and a brief session at the university and further provided all the support I needed. Language was a small problem, as I only have limited passive knowledge of Spanish, but IMDEC translated all for me when necessary. Also, my experience with Google Translate was positive, a great help when reviewing large pieces of the original design drawings and reports. The reason for a 105-meter dam was that more water could be provided to the city of Lyon. But as I said already, losses in the city's reticulation system were estimated at 50%. In fact, by repairing the system, one could save on the extra cost of raising the dam from 80 to 105 meters and the capacity of the aqueduct, and saving Temaca at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tunis. Fernanda, what was the role of EDLC once the expert is engaged and in contact with the client or the local NGO? Do you remain involved in the case?
Yes, we remain involved if needed. In this particular case, for example, we helped organize a summary of the most important issues to be reviewed by the expert, and we also helped formulate the questions to be answered for the legal opinion. And we remain, of course, very much involved in the legal strategy, trying to find the best way for the scientific findings to be useful for the lawsuit. In this case, key to changing the course of the case involved both Tunis's expert opinion and a somehow twisted legal strategy. In this case, the community argued that their rights had been violated by the lack of enforcement of a Supreme Court ruling in another case brought not by them, but by the Congress of Jalisco. So the ruling in that case, which was already mentioned by Claudia, ordered that the 80-meter dam design be respected because of irregularities in the approval of the higher dam. And this is how the construction was halted 20 centimeters before reaching 80 meters.
Thank you. Claudia, how have Tunis's findings been taken by the Mexican courts? Have the courts accepted the advice of a foreign expert as evidence? And how did you present this type of opinion? Do you have to request the court to accept the evidence beforehand?
Bueno, es importante decir que cuando Teunis visitó México, de la visita que ya hablaba hace un momento, pudimos hablar con el juez el juez federal que estaba a cargo del caso. Él nos escuchó por más de una hora. Él escuchó todas las conclusiones y las recomendaciones que Teunis había obtenido en su estudio. Para nosotros esa conversación, o sea, esa hora y media que platicaron con la ayuda de un traductor, fueron fundamentales para mantener la suspensión en julio de 2014. Desde julio de 2014 la presa está detenida. Aunque la opinión de Teunis no se puede presentar como una prueba pericial, sí se trata de un estudio que nosotros presentamos como un estudio documental certificado por un experto y le damos un valor documental como una prueba documental. Le pedimos al juez que lo valore y también durante todo el proceso, o sea, durante todo el juicio, hemos repetido los argumentos del estudio, ¿no? Todo lo que él dijo, las evidencias encontradas, reforzaron en todo momento nuestros argumentos legales. Quizás no es una prueba pericial, pero sí es una prueba fundamental en estos casos.
I'll translate for Claudia. So Claudia says that when Tunis visited Mexico, they went together with the community to talk with the judge who was in charge of the case. and the judge listened to Tunis for more than 1 hour on the conclusions and the recommendations of his report. Claudia thinks that that conversation was key to achieving a suspension of the construction, a legal suspension of the construction in July 2014, which has been maintained until now. The opinion of the legal opinion of an expert can be not considered by a court as an expert study because it's a foreign expert, but it can be presented as documentary evidence. And this is the way we have presented it. And in addition to it, we have continued to use the scientific arguments of the legal opinion in all of our legal writings to reinforce our case.
Gracias, Claudia and Fernanda. Tunis, can you please tell me more about your experience on this case?
Sure. The case was extremely interesting from a technical point of view. For instance, how to estimate the height of a dam when you can't walk around and take pictures. That problem was solved thanks to an official brochure of the project, the so-called Libro Blanco by Conagua, which showed a photograph of early phase of the construction. A concrete dam has to be keyed into the sides of the valley or gorge it closes off. To that end, the valley sides are completely cleaned until the solid rock shows. Then steps are blasted in the rock to ensure a good connection with the concrete. The levels of these steps were clearly marked with white paint at the time of the photo in the Libro Blanco was taken and could be compared with the photos taken by the drone. It is also interesting to see that there are no geotechnical reports nor tender documents for the construction of the protection dikes, implying that they probably were never going to be built since they were unnecessary in the case of a 105-meter dam when Temaca would be flooded anyway. The dam builder was so sure that the construction of up to 105 meters would be successful that the new resettlement town was already under construction. After this project, I've been involved with others via EDLC, from which I learned that technical and economical solutions are very often against the will of the local population, and certainly not to their benefit.
Thank you, that is true. Fernanda, what lessons did you take from this case?
Well, we see very often situations in which development projects are imposed on local communities. But this case was an extreme example of disrespect of the community's rights. It was a combination of factors that made possible for Temaca to be still alive, and that includes their own capacity to get organized, very committed and knowledgeable local council, and of course, the expert opinion of an extremely experienced hydrologist such as Tunis, who made all the difference in our understanding of the case and what was reasonable to ask the courts to do.
Thank you. Claudia and Tunis, do you have anything else to add?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
In the case of Temaca, the reservoir behind the dam wall has still not been filled to my knowledge. Why? I don't know. But for sure, if it had been filled even partly, the outcome for Temaca might have been different. I don't think the battle is over yet.
Wow. Claudia, do you have anything to add?
Bueno, pues sí, para mí creo que es importante resaltar el trabajo impresionante que a miles de kilómetros de distancia, sin conocer el territorio, con documentos que fueron escritos originalmente en español, Tunis pudo realizar un documento clave que se presentó en el momento clave para la defensa de los derechos humanos de Temacapulin. El conocimiento científico reforzó nuestra estrategia legal y por ello estamos muy agradecidos tanto con Teunis como con EDLC que apoyó todo esto. Y eso también ha puesto en evidencia que el principal, o sea, que el argumento científico no es el argumento para este proyecto y entonces es el argumento económico. La presa ha incrementado en 350% su costo original y creemos que es básicamente que el negocio de las empresas está en la construcción del proyecto y por eso es tanta la necesidad de seguir la construcción, ¿no? Por una cuestión económica y no científica. Y eso fue importante en su momento, o es importante todavía.
I will translate what Claudia has just said. She was very impressed that Tunis, being thousands of kilometers away, without knowing the territory and reviewing documents written in Spanish, that with all those difficulties, he was able to prepare a document that was really key to the defense of the human rights of the people of Temaca. She says the scientific knowledge was very important for the legal strategy, and they are very grateful for Tunis and for EDLC for supporting their work. Claudia says that, of course, there is a scientific argument, but there is also an economic argument behind this project. They have just found that the cost of this construction has raised by 350% since 2006. And maybe this is why the government has been decided to do this project at 100 meters. I mean, more expensive than necessary.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Claudia, Tunis, Fernanda, thank you. At this particular point, we will accept any questions that people in the audience have. If you could please write your questions down in the GoToWebinar box. I don't see any questions so far. Can I ask a question then? If at this particular point the dam hasn't been used and Temaca is still there and the people are still there, but it doesn't seem as though the fight is over, what do you think comes next? What, in addition now, is it just waiting to see what's going to happen? What's the latest communication?
Claudia, ¿quieres contestar?
Sí.
¿Qué es lo que sigue?
Ajá. Bueno, como platicaba hace un poco, recientemente los gobiernos de Jalisco y Guanajuato firmaron un acuerdo para pedir al gobierno federal que se siga la construcción para 105 metros. El gobierno federal todavía no tiene una respuesta a esto. aunque el presidente López Obrador en campaña y durante varias ocasiones había prometido a los habitantes de Temacapulin que no iba a continuar con el proyecto y que Temaca se iba a salvar. Entonces ahora pues estamos en negociaciones con el gobierno federal para que detengan el proyecto y nos gustaría hacer evidente que en estos momentos sale más caro continuar el proyecto por, por los costos y porque también se inundaría Temacapulín, que detener el proyecto 80 metros, incluso pues detenerlo totalmente, o sea, dejar el proyecto, ¿no? Por los costos que ahora significan y también por la violación de los derechos de la gente.
So Claudia says what has happened recently is that the government of Jalisco and the government of the neighbor state of Guanajuato have signed an agreement by which they plan to keep the construction at 105 meters. But this is also a federal project, so the federal government has to agree to this, and it has not yet given an answer. Earlier, López Obrador, the current president, had promised to the community that the dam construction was not going to continue and Temaca was going to be saved. Now, they are having meetings with the community, and the lawyers are having meetings with the federal government, asking them for the project to be halted, to continue to be halted, and also they want to prove that it's more expensive to try to conclude the project at 105 meters because of course, the costs of the construction, but also the costs of relocating Temacapulin and the violation of their rights. So they want to ask for the project to be stopped for sure.
Wow. And if the project is stopped at 80 meters, then I have to assume that the dikes will need to be built. And Tunis, I believe at that particular point, you said that there would then have to be a lot more, what is it called? Searching for where the dikes would be. Is this correct?
The situation with the dikes is that they are 12 meter high, so that their crest is at the same level as the crest of the main dam.
Oh, okay.
Thus protecting Temacapulin.
Okay.
But by building those dikes, there is a little problem, and that's the internal drainage of the city.
Oh.
Because of the level in the reservoir is high, then the city cannot drain automatically, but needs a pumping station or a new drainage system. That system can be built with a outlet to the other side of the town. It needs, we did a very rough investigation with a local student who had some GIS information, and it was extremely interesting to see that it could be done.
Oh, good.
But apart from that, the CONAGUA, which is the institution behind the building of the dam, they argued that the soil situation is not good enough to build high dikes. But there was never done a thorough investigation. So that means that information still has to be found.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Kathy,
Yes?
I'd like to add something.
Definitely.
You know, the audience may ask, what is the problem in being relocated? Because many towns are relocated, people are relocated
Yes.
everywhere in the world, and this is something that happens often. The problem is that in Mexico, there are various communities that have been displaced by them and never relocated and never compensated. So the inhabitants of Temaca, they know what will happen to them if they are displaced. Claudia can give us examples. There was even a conference in Temacapulin where everyone could hear the testimonies of people who had been displaced by other dams for many years. And so it's always a bad thing to take people out of their villages where they are without respecting their rights. And it's always a situation when people lose when they are relocated. It's never better for them. And in this case, for example, Tunis mentioned that a village was being built up in the hills without enough land for them to have their crops, because the houses that people have in Temacapulin, they are big, and sometimes they can grow crops or even have their cattle inside their gardens because they are very large. And this is not something they could replicate in the new relocation site. There is a report on this by the special rapporteur on the right to food explaining that relocation, the way it was planned, was going to violate the right to food.
Wow, so this really is quite an involved project and quite involved legal case with the government.
Yes, very much. Claudia, ¿cuántas demandas presentaron más o menos?
Bueno, hemos presentado en 3 momentos, ¿no? Presentamos en 2008 6 demandas en contra del inicio de la licitación, que fue cuando se dio el proyecto a las empresas, que son empresas mexicanas y españolas, que junto con Conagua hacen la construcción. Luego en 2010 presentamos otras 6, bueno, ahí fueron 5, perdón, contra el inicio de la obra. Y en 2014 presentamos otras 3 en contra del incumplimiento de la sentencia de la Suprema Corte. Y aparte presentamos alrededor de 10 juicios administrativos en contra de la reubicación, del plan de desarrollo de la reubicación, que eso, como no había las condiciones de vida digna y de vivienda y no se había hecho a través de una consulta, la reubicación fue anulada. Solo se alcanzaron a construir 15 casas, pero ya no se terminó el proyecto y ahora también está parado el proyecto de la reubicación.
Let me translate. So the lawsuits have been filed at 3 different moments. First, in 2008, 6 lawsuits were presented when it was still at the bidding process. And the bidders were Mexican and Spanish companies. Then in 2010, they presented 5 other lawsuits against the beginning of the construction. And in 2004, 3 other lawsuits asking the enforcement of favorable rulings that had not been enforced. In relation to the relocation project and other administrative level issues, there have been 10 administrative cases, and the resettlement project was halted a court because it didn't respect the rights to consultation and other rights of the community. So only 15 houses have been built and nothing else, and the project is halted.
Thank you. I have a question for Claudia. So Fernanda and Claudia, both of you might be able to answer this. So could you describe the scientific needs that the groups in Mexico or elsewhere might have in these type of cases and on which cases she works? But that's kind of combined with not just the scientific expertise that she finds necessary, but also about the expertise that you can find in the community at hand and whether or not that expertise is used, because sometimes it's easy to ignore the local knowledge when you're bringing an expert in. So I'm wondering how all that works together to make sure that the people in the community, their expertise and knowledge is brought into the situation.
Fernanda, ¿me puedes traducir un poco para ver si entendí?
Si quieres saber si en este proyecto o otros proyectos en México, cómo se utiliza la cuestión de la ciencia y de los científicos. Digamos que una cosa es traer científicos de fuera y otra cosa también es aprovechar el conocimiento que la gente local tiene. Entonces, si están trabajando conjuntamente, o si es solo alguien de fuera que viene, o si también incluyen lo que se conoce localmente con la gente y científicos locales.
Ah, sí, sí. Ah, sí. Voy a contestar. Sí había entendido entonces. Bueno, en el caso, sí, hemos trabajado. De hecho, Teunis tuvo una reunión en la universidad con este grupo es como un grupo de académicos, les decimos nosotros, o se pueden llamar científicos, que han estado desde diferentes especialidades apoyando a la comunidad. O sea, unos son científicos, por ejemplo, hay una ingeniera hidróloga, bueno, dos ingenieros hidrólogos, hay científicos sociales, o sea, gente que ha hecho periciales en antropología, otros que hicieron periciales en psicología social, pero sí, Teunis tuvo una reunión con este grupo de científicos, hay ingenieros ambientales, hay personas que están relacionadas con toda la economía ambiental. Entonces sí hay un grupo de científicos que, que han hecho periciales y que además en todo momento están alrededor de la comunidad. Además, dentro de la misma comunidad hay gente o personas que tienen mucho conocimiento pues de los manejos del agua. De hecho, ellos también trabajaron con Teunis diciéndoles enseñando de dónde venía el agua y cómo corría, que eso para él fue muy importante.
Okay, let me translate. So
Yeah.
Claudia says that there are scientists and students at local level who have also collaborated in the project. Indeed, Tunis met with a group of the students and professionals from with different types of knowledge that have worked on the case. So there are hydrologists, social scientists, psychologists, environmental engineers, and people focusing on environmental economics who have presented expert studies in the case and who have discussed the case with Tunis. And in addition to it, local community members have also participated and discussed with Tunis, and they have showed him, for example, where the water came from or where it went to. So it was important for them to have that discussion as well.
Thank you. Okay, I'm looking at the questions and I want to make sure that there's time to answer these. One question in particular, I believe, would be more for Teresa or Joel. And I was going to ask if that would be focused on at the very end. An individual would like to know more about the AAAS list of available scientists and how they can and how the connection is made with the hydrologist, where the expenses are paid for travel, etc. But in terms of this case, I was wondering if you could talk about, and this would go for Tunis, Claudia, and Fernanda. I think all three of you would do this, is how important is it to have the judge be educated on the science of the dam? It seems that not enough attention is paid in the HR space, in the human rights space, to the non-legal expertise of judges who are often making decisions that need to be informed by science and technology. And if they would like some more detail on this particular element.
Maybe I can jump in.
Okay.
So in relation to, I mean, how do we as an NGO, we find the experts? Of course, we send a request to AAAS explaining there is a format and we explain what we need. And sometimes we discuss it with Teresa or others, what exactly is needed, if it's not very clear. And they send us possible experts, and then with their CVs. Then we contact them directly and explain what, further explain the scope of the project. In general, it is in the cases in which we request experts, we ask them to do a technical report or an expert opinion of a few pages that is going to be used in the lawsuit. Sometimes it's also depending on the availability of the expert. In this case, Tunis was available. It's possible to travel. And in this case, in relation to the expenses, Tunis didn't charge anything, so it was just a matter of paying travel costs. And we shared the travel costs with IMDEC, the other local NGO. In terms of the importance of the judge listening to the technical arguments, well, was the most important aspect of this case, because sometimes you just present something on paper and you don't have the chance to explain it to the judge, and so he or she will not pay attention to it. But if you have the chance to having a meeting and discussing, it makes a difference, really. And from what Tunis and Claudia tell, the judge was very interested in understanding the difference between the two projects. It's also important to note that when Tunis started to study the case, the community, the lawyers, no one from our side knew what was being built. We didn't know if it was an 80-meter dam or 105 dam. So it was very important to know what the government was doing. And this is when we learned that they were disrespecting a legal decision, and this is how new legal arguments could be presented showing that violation. And this is how the dam was stopped, basically.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, I would like to add something.
Yes.
And that's the availability of the drawings and the designs. Actually, I'm not sure if that was the idea of Conagua, but all the information was available on the internet. So when I found their site and the project site, all the information was clear and was openly available, which was a very great help, of course.
Yes. Thank you. Joel, the last thing I want to do is go over, and I'm already over 11 o'clock. There's still some more questions. Should I just stop? What?
Well, we can probably take one more question. Anything else? I am happy to provide that information to our speakers so that they can follow up after the webinar.
Okay, thank you. This one deals, I believe, with Claudia and maybe Fernanda. So an individual wants to know if NGOs in Mexico make strategic alliances with university or research groups, and if yes, what do you think about in-house capacity or maybe hiring scientists within your organization? So Fernanda, I believe that is for your organization. And are there technical scientific NGOs in Mexico that supply support in these particular kinds of cases?
Claudia pregunta si, ¿entendiste?
Ajá. O si hay otras organizaciones de derechos humanos que estén usando evidencias científicas, ¿no? Algo así.
No, si tienen localmente, digamos que en México, universidades con condiciones de proveer este trabajo científico también. Y si las ONGs a veces tienen en su equipo científicos.
Ah, ok. Bueno, creo, sí hay, no es tanto las universidades, creo que en México pasa bueno, solo en el caso de presas, pero podríamos hablar en casos de minería y también en casos de eólicas, por ejemplo, que el problema con las universidades, o por lo menos en México, es que muchas veces son contratadas por las empresas para realizar las manifestaciones de impacto ambiental. Entonces, cuando pedimos a las universidades que se involucren en la defensa de los pueblos o de los derechos humanos, la universidad no quiere porque ya tienen como contratos con el gobierno y entonces no quieren como meterse en problemas. Lo que hemos logrado es algunas personas de universidades que sí se quieren involucrar, de las universidades públicas, pero no se meten tanto porque son parte también a veces de los mismos proyectos y no quieren estar. Eh, entonces eso. Y las ONGs que usen, creo que no. O sea, sí buscan expertos, pero hay pocos que tengan, no creo que haya, más bien buscan estos aliados estratégicos, pero no que lo tengan, o sea, sí tienen, no que lo tengan de manera fija. Sí, sí hay grupos, pero no es parte de como de los que siempre están, creo.
Let me translate. So Claudia says, with the universities, it's a little bit difficult, not only in cases involving dams, but also involving mines and wind energy. Because when they ask the universities to collaborate with an expert study, the university says they can't because they are hired to prepare the EIAs, the environmental impact studies, for the very same projects. And sometimes they receive funds from the government or the companies. So it's more a matter of finding individuals who could collaborate. And this is difficult because sometimes they will have a conflict of interest. They will work on the same projects. In terms of NGOs having their own scientists, it's not very often that it happens. In general, scientists are found through partnerships with other groups. And from our point of view, from EDLC's point of view, we have thought about having a staff scientist, but the thing is that there are different science needs. So sometimes you need a hydrogeologist, sometimes you need a hydrologist, sometimes you need an economist, sometimes you need a volcanologist, someone expert in oil spills or air pollution. So it's different types of expertise. So it's better to have an expert from which is not, we're never going to have one person with all those different expertise.
Thank you so very much. I cannot extend my appreciation so much. Fernanda, I appreciate all your time. Gracias, Claudia. Tunis, thank you so much for being willing to give your time.
Gracias.
I so appreciate it. Gracias. Joel, thank you so much for your technical support. For the people who are still participating, it's suggested that when you're conducting a project and you need program evaluation or an expertise, we recommend that you add an evaluation expert on the project from the very beginning. And as the plans unfold for the webinars coming up this year, AAAS will let you know. You can see on the last slide, if you have any questions, please email Oliver. And thank you so much for AAAS, Fernanda, Claudia, and Tunis. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the day.
Thank you.
It was my
Gracias.
pleasure. My pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you.